In the scorching sands of Tel El Masr, a priceless Egyptian amulet vanishes, and a renowned archaeologist lies dead, poisoned. Hercule Poirot, the master detective, steps into a web of ambition, deceit, and whispers of an ancient curse. A rival with a grudge, a curator with a secret, a silent guide who knows the desert's shadows, each hides a truth. As clues unravel, a torn scarf, a cyanide vial, a defaced carving, Poirot's little grey cells race to uncover a murderer before the sands bury the truth forever. Will he solve the mystery of the vanished relic? Chapter 1. The desert's secret, the relentless sun of the Egyptian desert, beat down upon the sprawling sands of Tel El Masr, where ancient ruins lay half buried, their secrets whispered only to the wind. Hercule Poirot, his pristine suit an incongruous sight amidst the dust and heat, stepped carefully from the motor car that had brought him to this remote archaeological site. His polished shoes sank slightly into the sand, and he adjusted his broad-brimmed hat with a delicate flick of his wrist, shielding his sharp grey eyes from the glare. At his side, Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the loyal companion, mopped his brow with a handkerchief, muttering about the infernal climate. "Monsieur Poirot, I still don't see why you've dragged us to this god-forsaken place," Hastings said, squinting at the scattered tents and scaffolding of the dig site. "Surely a holiday in Cairo would have been more to your taste." Poirot's moustache twitched with the hint of a smile. "Mon cher Hastings, the little grey cells, they do not take holidays. I am here at the behest of Sir Roderick Blaine, a man of impeccable taste in both diplomacy and antiquities. He has encountered a puzzle, and where there is a puzzle, there is Poirot." They were met at the edge of the camp by Sir Roderick himself, a tall, weathered man with a clipped moustache and an air of urgency. His usually composed demeanour was frayed, his eyes darting toward the cluster of workers huddled near a partially excavated tomb. "Poirot, thank heaven you're here," he said, clasping the detective's hand. "We are in the midst of a calamity. Dr. Harold Vance, our lead archaeologist, was found dead this morning, right there, by the tomb. And the amulet of Anubis, a treasure of incalculable value, has vanished." Poirot's gaze sharpened, his head tilting slightly as he absorbed the words. "Dead, you say? And a treasure gone? This is no mere misfortune, Sir Roderick. Tell me everything. Omit no detail, however trivial." Sir Roderick led them towards the site, his voice low and urgent. The camp was a hive of activity, with workers pausing to whisper among themselves, their eyes wide with fear. The tomb, a low structure of weathered stone, loomed ahead, its entrance partially cleared of sand. Nearby, a chalk outline marked where Dr. Vance's body had been found at dawn, sprawled as though struck down by some unseen force. The workers spoke in hushed tones of a curse, for the amulet of Anubis, unearthed only the previous day, was said to carry the wrath of the jackal-headed god. Its disappearance had ignited rumors of divine retribution. Poirot dismissed such talk with a wave of his gloved hand. "Curses, bah! Superstition is the refuge of those who lack method. The little grey cells, they will uncover the truth. Now, Sir Roderick, describe to me the scene as it was found." Sir Roderick gestured toward the chalk outline. Vance was discovered just before sunrise by one of the labourers. His face was twisted in agony, as though he suffered greatly before death. There were no obvious wounds, no blood. The amulet, which he had placed in a locked case last night, was gone. The case was found open, the lock unbroken. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the scene. The sand around the tomb was disturbed, as though by a brief struggle, but the surrounding area was curiously pristine, with no footprints leading away. He knelt, his fingers brushing the ground, and paused at the sight of a small, glinting object half buried in the sand. A broken glass vial, its faint scent sharp and bitter, reminiscent of almonds. "Hastings," he murmured, "this is no artifact of the pharaohs. This is modern, and it suggests a cause most sinister." Hastings, peering over his shoulder, frowned. "Poison, Poirot? Out here in the desert?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, slipping the vial into a handkerchief. "But why? And by whom? The amulet's theft may be the key, or a distraction. We must learn who had access to Dr. Vance and to this relic." Sir Roderick cleared his throat. "There are 3 you must meet, Poirot." Dr. Leonard Grayson, a rival archaeologist, was openly envious of Vance's find. Miss Clara Wentworth, the curator, handled the amulet last, and Hassan Khalid, our guide, knows these ruins better than anyone. They were all here last night. Poirot nodded, his mind already arranging the facts like pieces on a chessboard. "Bon, I shall speak with them. But first, I must see this tomb. The scene of the crime, it speaks, if one knows how to listen." As they approached the tomb's entrance, Poirot's keen eyes noted a faint carving of Anubis on the stone, its edges unnaturally sharp, as though recently tampered with. He said nothing, but his moustache quivered with interest. The desert might keep its secrets, but Hercule Poirot was determined to unearth them. Chapter 2. The suspects. The midday heat pressed heavily upon the archaeological camp at Tel El Masra, the air shimmering above the sun-scorched sands. Within the largest canvas tent, which served as both meeting place and makeshift office for the expedition, Hercule Poirot stood with an air of quiet authority, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the dusty, utilitarian surroundings. The tent's interior was cluttered with folding tables strewn with maps, pottery shards, and handwritten notes, while the faint hum of a portable generator underscored the tension that hung like a miasma among the gathered company. Captain Arthur Hastings stood at Poirot's side, his honest face flushed from the heat, his eyes darting curiously between the 3 individuals seated before them. These were the principal figures in the drama that had unfolded with the death of Dr. Harold Vance and the theft of the amulet of Anubis, and Poirot had summoned them to begin his inquiry. "Messieurs et mademoiselles," Poirot began, his voice clear and measured, carrying the weight of his reputation as a detective of unparalleled acumen. "A tragedy has occurred. Dr. Vance, a man of learning, lies dead. A treasure of antiquity, the amulet of Anubis, has vanished. These are not accidents, nor are they the work of some ancient curse, as the superstitious might claim. No, this is the work of a human hand, guided by a human mind. And I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover that mind, however cunning it may be." He paused, his sharp grey eyes moving from one face to another, noting every flicker of expression, every subtle shift in posture. The 3 suspects sat in a semicircle on folding chairs, each reacting to his words in their own way. Dr. Leonard Grayson, a lean man in his late 40s, with thinning hair and wire-rimmed spectacles, leaned back with a scowl, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. Miss Clara Wentworth, a woman of perhaps 35, her auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a wide-brimmed hat, clutched a leather-bound notebook, her knuckles white with tension. Beside her, Mr. Hassan Khalid, the local guide, sat with an impassive expression, his dark eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond Poirot, his weathered hands resting calmly in his lap. "Let us begin with the facts," Poirot continued, clasping his hands behind his back. "Doctor, Vance was found dead at dawn, near the tomb where the amulet was discovered. The amulet, placed in a locked case last night, is gone. The lock was not forced, suggesting either great skill or access to the key. Each of you was present in the camp last night. Each of you had reason to interact with Dr. Vance, and each of you, perhaps, had a motive. I ask for your candor, for the truth will emerge, with or without your cooperation." Dr. Grayson was the first to speak, his voice sharp with indignation. "This is outrageous, Poirot. You cannot seriously suggest that I, a respected scholar, would stoop to murder or theft. Vance was a reckless fool, digging where he shouldn't, chasing glory instead of science. If he met his end, it's no surprise, likely the tomb collapsed or some such mishap. As for the amulet, perhaps one of the labourers took it. These locals, you know, they're not above pilfering." Poirot's moustache twitched slightly, a sign Hastings recognized as amusement tempered by calculation. "Doctor Grayson," Poirot said smoothly, "you speak with passion, but your words betray a certain animosity toward the deceased. It is well known that you and Dr. Vance were rivals, n'est-ce pas? Your own work on the tombs of the Theban necropolis has been overshadowed by his discoveries here. Might this not breed resentment?" Grayson's face reddened, his spectacles glinting as he leaned forward. "Resentment? Of course I resented his methods. He was a showman, not an archaeologist. He'd have sold the amulet to the highest bidder if it meant a headline. But I didn't kill him. I was in my tent all night, working on my notes. Ask anyone." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "We shall verify, monsieur. The truth, it is like the sand. It shifts, but it cannot hide forever." He turned to Miss Wentworth, whose pale face had grown paler still during Grayson's outburst. "Mademoiselle Wentworth, you are the curator, responsible for cataloguing the finds. The amulet was in your care, was it not? Tell me of your movements last night." Clara Wentworth straightened, her voice steady, but tinged with emotion. "I am devastated by Dr. Vance's death, Monsieur Poirot. He was a brilliant man, dedicated to preserving Egypt's heritage. As for the amulet, I catalogued it yesterday evening, around 9 o'clock, in the presence of Dr. Vance and Mr. Khalid. It was a magnificent piece, gold, inlaid with lapis lazuli, inscribed with hieroglyphs invoking Anubis's protection. I placed it in the locked case myself, and Dr. Vance kept the key. I returned to my tent afterward, and did not leave until morning, when I heard the commotion." Poirot's eyes lingered on her, noting the faint tremor in her voice, the way her fingers tightened around her notebook. "You are precise, mademoiselle, as befits your profession. Yet precision can mask as well as reveal. The case was opened without force, suggesting the key was used. Who else might have had access to it?" Clara's lips parted, then closed. "No one, to my knowledge. Dr. Vance was meticulous about security. He kept the key on his person at all times." "Indeed," Poirot murmured. "And yet, the amulet is gone. Curious, no?" He turned at last to Hassan Khalid, whose silence had been a presence as palpable as the other's words. The guide's face was a mask of calm, his dark eyes unreadable, though Poirot sensed a watchfulness beneath the surface. "Monsieur Khalid, you are the guide, the man who knows the desert and its secrets. You were present when the amulet was catalogued, Oui? What can you tell me of last night? Hassan's voice was low, measured, with the faintest trace of an accent. I am a guide, Monsieur Poirot, not a keeper of treasures. I helped Dr. Vance navigate the ruins, nothing more. Last night I was in my tent, as always. I heard nothing, saw nothing. The desert takes what it will. Poirot tilted his head, studying the man's hands, which bore the marks of a life spent in harsh conditions, calluses, a faint scar across the knuckles. The dessert, monsieur, may take, but it does not poison. Nor does it unlock cases without a key. You know these ruins better than anyone. Could someone have entered the tomb unseen, perhaps with your knowledge? Hassan's eyes met Poirot's for the first time, steady and unyielding. The ruins are old, but they do not hide from me. If someone moved in the night, it was not with my help. Poirot nodded slowly, his mind already sifting through the words, the gestures, the silences. He stepped back, addressing all three. Each of you claims innocence, yet the facts speak otherwise. A man is dead, a treasure stolen. I will examine your tents, your belongings, your alibis. The truth, it is like the Nile. It flows steadily, and no dam can hold it back. As the suspects rose to leave, Poirot caught a fleeting glance between Clara and Hassan, a momentary flicker, too quick to interpret, yet enough to pique his curiosity. He turned to Hastings, who had been scribbling notes in his pocketbook, his brow furrowed with concentration. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, lowering his voice, "what do you make of them?" Grayson's a hothead, Clara's nervous as a cat, and that Khalid fellow, well, he's as unreadable as a sphinx. Poirot smiled faintly, his eyes gleaming. They are, each of them, a study in contrasts, mon ami. Dr. Grayson's anger masks something, perhaps fear, perhaps guilt. Mademoiselle Wentworth's precision is admirable, but her nerves betray a secret she does not yet share. And Monsieur Khalid, his silence is not empty. It is heavy with knowledge. We must watch them closely. Hastings nodded, though his expression suggested he was still grappling with the complexity of it all. But the poison, Poirot, that vial you found, surely that points to someone with access to chemicals, like Grayson. He's a scientist, after all. Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone thoughtful. But the little grey cells, they remind me that poison is not the only weapon. Motive, opportunity, method, these are the threads we must weave together. Come, let us visit their tents. The personal effects, they often speak louder than words. They began with Doctor. Grayson's tent, a chaotic space filled with maps, journals, and scientific instruments. A small wooden case caught Poirot's eye, its lid ajar, revealing vials and powders used for preserving artifacts. One slot was empty, the size matching the broken vial found near the tomb. Poirot's fingers hovered over it, but he did not touch. Interesting, Hastings. A missing vial, perhaps the twin of our discovery. But we must not leap to conclusions. Clara Wentworth's tent was a model of order, her desk lined with neatly labelled files and a typewriter. A photograph of a young man in military uniform sat in a silver frame, its edges worn from frequent handling. Poirot noted it, his mind filing away the detail. Her notebook, open to a page detailing the amulet, bore precise sketches and annotations, but a single page was missing, its edge torn. A curious omission, Poirot murmured. What was written here, I wonder? Hassan's tent was sparse, almost ascetic, with a rolled-up prayer rug and a small brass lamp. A leather satchel contained maps and a worn dagger, its blade etched with Arabic script. Poirot examined it closely, noting the absence of any modern tools or chemicals. "A man of the desert," he said softly, "but not without his secrets." As they emerged into the blazing sunlight, Poirot paused, his gaze sweeping the camp. The workers had resumed their tasks, but their glances were wary, their whispers tinged with fear. Sir Roderick approached, his face etched with concern. "Have you made progress, Poirot?" "The labourers are restless. They believe the curse will claim another." Poirot's eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. "Restless, oui, but useful. Their fear may loosen tongues. I will speak with them, Sir Roderick. And you, ensure no one leaves the camp. The truth is here, and I will find it." As Sir Roderick departed, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? All this mystery, these suspects, it's like a game to you." Poirot's expression grew serious. "Not a game, mon ami, but a puzzle. And in this puzzle, a man has lost his life. The amulet of Anubis is but a piece. The heart of this matter lies in why Dr. Vance was killed. We must proceed with method, with order. The little grey cells, they are already at work." The tent flap rustled as a young labourer approached, his face anxious. "Monsieur Poirot," he said in halting English, "I saw something last night. A shadow near the tomb, moving quickly. It wore a cloak, like the Bedouin." Poirot's interest sharpened. "A shadow, you say? At what hour?" "Just before midnight," the labourer replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I thought it was a spirit, but now I am not sure." Poirot thanked the man, his mind racing. A shadow in a cloak moving in the night. Was it Hassan, with his knowledge of the desert? Or another, cloaking their actions in mystery? The threads of the case were beginning to form, but the pattern remained elusive. "Come, Hastings," Poirot said, striding toward the tomb. "The desert hides much, but not from Hercule Poirot. We shall see what secrets it yields next." Chapter 3. The scene of the crime. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting the ruins of Tel el Masr in a twilight glow that softened the harsh edges of the ancient stones. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the fading light, stood at the entrance to the tomb where Dr. Harold Vance had met his end. His polished shoes, now dusted with sand, gleamed faintly as he moved with deliberate care, his eyes scanning every detail of the scene. Captain Arthur Hastings followed, his notebook clutched tightly, his face a mixture of curiosity and unease. The air was cooler now, but the weight of the day's tragedy lingered, as did the whispers of a curse that Poirot dismissed with a flick of his gloved hand. "Really, Poirot," Hastings ventured, glancing at the shadowed tomb, "this place gives me the creeps. All this talk of Anubis and curses, it's enough to make one wonder if there's something to it." Poirot's moustache quivered with amusement. "Mon cher Hastings, the only curse here is that of human greed or malice. The gods of Egypt do not steal amulets or poison men. No, we seek a mortal hand, and the scene of the crime will speak to us if we listen." They approached the chalk outline marking where Vance's body had been found, now faintly visible in the dim light. The sand around it was disturbed, as though a brief struggle had taken place. But Poirot noted the peculiar absence of footprints leading away. "Curious," he murmured, kneeling to examine the ground. His fingers brushed the sand, revealing a faint, irregular pattern, as if someone had swept the area to obscure their tracks. "This was no accident, Hastings. The killer took care to conceal their presence. But carelessness is the enemy of cunning. He moved closer to the tomb's entrance, a low archway of weathered limestone, its surface etched with faded hieroglyphs. A single carving stood out, a depiction of Anubis, the jackal-headed god, holding a staff. Unlike the other carvings, its edges were sharp, the stone freshly chipped in places, suggesting deliberate tampering. Poirot's eyes narrowed. This defacement, it is recent. Why would someone damage a sacred image? To fuel talk of a curse, perhaps? Hastings peered at the carving, his brow furrowed. A curse, Poirot? You think someone's trying to scare the workers? Or to divert suspicion, Poirot replied, his voice low. A curse is a convenient fiction, mon ami. It draws attention from the true motive. As he spoke, Poirot's gaze fell upon a small, glinting object half buried in the sand near the tomb's threshold. A broken glass vial, its jagged edge catching the last rays of a twilight. He retrieved it with a handkerchief, holding it to his nose and inhaling cautiously. A faint, bitter scent, like almonds, confirmed his earlier suspicion. "Cyanide, Hastings," he said gravely. "This vial held poison, and it is no artifact of the pharaohs. It is modern, precise, deadly." Hastings's eyes widened. "Poison? Out here. But who would carry such a thing? Grayson, perhaps. He's got all those chemicals in his tent." Poirot's expressions remained inscrutable. "Perhaps, but we must not assume. The vial is a clue, but it doesn't yet point to a single hand. We must consider how it came to be here, and why." He turned his attention to the surrounding area, noting a narrow path leading from the tomb to a cluster of rocks some 20 yards away. The sand there was undisturbed, but a faint discoloration caught his eye. A reddish-brown stain, barely visible against the stone. "Blood?" Hastings asked, following his gaze. "No, mon ami," Poirot said, crouching to inspect it. "Not blood. Rust, perhaps, or some chemical residue. It is too faint to be certain without analysis. But it is out of place." He marked the spot mentally, intending to have it examined later. The tomb itself beckoned, its dark interior a yawning void. Poirot produced a small flashlight from his pocket, its beam cutting through the shadows. The entrance chamber was small, its walls lined with faded reliefs depicting offerings to the gods. At the center stood a wooden table, where the locked case that had held the amulet of Anubis now sat empty, its lid ajar. Poirot examined the lock, his fingers tracing its smooth surface. "No scratches, no signs of tampering," he observed. "The key was used, or a duplicate. This suggests intimacy with Dr. Vance's habits." Hastings scratched his head. "But who could have got hold of the key? Clara said Vance kept it on him at all times." "Précisément," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "And yet, the key was not found on his body. We must ask Sir Roderick if it has been recovered." As they emerged from the tomb, a young labourer approached, his face anxious in the flickering light of a nearby lantern. "Monsieur Poirot," he said in accented English, I saw something last night, near the tomb, before midnight. A figure, cloaked, moving quickly. I thought it was a spirit, but now—" He trailed off, his eyes darting nervously. Poirot's interest sharpened. "A cloaked figure, you say? Describe it, if you please." The labourer hesitated. "It was tall, wearing a dark cloak like the Bedouin. I could not see the face. It moved toward the rocks, then vanished." Poirot nodded, dismissing the man gently. "Merci. You have been most helpful." To Hastings, he added, "A cloaked figure. Hastings. This aligns with our earlier witness, but it raises questions. Was this our killer, or another player in this game? They returned to the chalk outline, where Poirot paused, his mind racing. The absence of footprints, the defaced carving, the vial, the rust-like stain, all were pieces of a puzzle, yet the picture remained incomplete. He turned to Hastings, his voice firm. "We must speak with Sir Roderick again. The key, the amulet, the poison. These are the threads we must follow. And we must learn more of this cloaked figure. Someone in this camp knows more than they say." As they walked back to the main tent, the stars emerged above, casting a silver glow over the desert. The camp was quiet now. The workers retired to their tents, but Poirot's mind was far from rest. "The scene of the crime, Hastings," he said softly. "It is like a stage. The props are set. The actors have played their parts. But the script, it is written in the shadows, and I, Hercule Poirot, will bring it to light." Chapter 4. The rival's ambition, Morning sun rose over Tel El Masr, its golden rays piercing the haze that clung to the desert ruins. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the dust that seemed to infiltrate every crevice, made his way to the tent of Dr. Leonard Grayson, the rival archaeologist whose sharp tongue and evident disdain for the late Dr. Harold Vance had already piqued the detective's interest. Captain Arthur Hastings trailed behind, his face a mixture of determination and mild discomfort from the lingering heat of the previous day. The camp was stirring to life, with labourers resuming their tasks under the watchful eye of Sir Roderick Blaine. But an undercurrent of unease persisted, fuelled by whispers of the missing amulet of Anubis and the shadow of a curse. Poirot paused at the entrance to Grayson's tent, his keen eyes noting the disarray that spilled beyond the canvas flap. Maps pinned haphazardly to a folding table, a stack of journals teetering precariously, and a scattering of scientific instruments glinting in the morning light. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, "observe the chaos. A man's surroundings reflect his mind. Dr. Grayson, I suspect, is a man of passion, perhaps too much so for his own good." Hastings nodded, peering inside. "Looks like a tornado hit the place. Hard to believe he's a scholar with all this mess." Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "Order in chaos, Hastings. It is there, if one knows where to look." He stepped inside, calling out, "Doctor!" "Grayson, a moment of your time, s'il vous plaît." Grayson emerged from behind a makeshift bookshelf, his lean frame stooped slightly, his spectacles slipping down his nose. His expression was one of barely concealed irritation, his greying hair dishevelled as though he had run his hands through it repeatedly. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice clipped, "I trust this is important. I have work to do, unlike some who seem to thrive on idle speculation." Poirot's eyes gleamed with amusement, undeterred by the man's brusqueness. "Idle, monsieur? No, my inquiries are most precise. A man is dead, a treasure stolen. These are matters of gravity. And you, Doctor Grayson, were no friend to Dr. Vance. Tell me, what was the nature of your rivalry?" Grayson adjusted his spectacles, his jaw tightening. Rivalry. Vance was a charlatan, a glory-seeker who cared more for headlines than scholarship. His methods were reckless, digging without proper surveys, risking the integrity of the site. He found the amulet of Anubis by sheer luck, not skill. I warned him the tomb was unstable, but he wouldn't listen. If he paid the price for his folly, that's no concern of mine. Poirot tilted his head. his gaze piercing. A strong opinion, monsieur. And yet, witnesses place you near the tomb last night, arguing with Dr. Vance. The hour was late, after 10, I am told. What was the cause of this heated exchange? Grayson's face flushed, his hands clenching at his sides. A professional disagreement, nothing more. He was planning to publish a paper claiming full credit for the amulet's discovery, ignoring my contributions to the expedition's funding and planning. I told him it was unethical, that the academic community would see through his grandstanding. We argued, yes, but I left him alive, Monsieur Poirot. I returned to my tent and worked on my notes until midnight. Poirot nodded slowly, his fingers brushing the edge of a cluttered table where a small wooden case caught his eye. Its lid was ajar, revealing a collection of vials and powders used for preserving artifacts. One slot was conspicuously empty, its size matching the broken vial found near the tomb. "This case, Dr. Grayson," Poirot said, gesturing toward it. "It contains chemicals, oui? Perhaps cyanide, used in your preservation work." Grayson's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Cyanide? Yes, I have it, for stabilizing certain minerals, but I keep it locked, and I haven't touched it in weeks. Are you accusing me, Poirot?" "Accusing? No, I observe," Poirot replied smoothly. "But the vial found near Dr. Vance's body. It bore the scent of almonds, a hallmark of cyanide. And this empty slot, it is most suggestive. Tell me, who else has access to your supplies?" "No one," Grayson snapped. "I keep my tent secure. If someone took a vial, they did so without my knowledge. Perhaps you should question the laborers. They're always poking around where they shouldn't." Poirot's expression remained impassive, but his mind was racing, cataloguing Grayson's defensiveness, the missing vial, the argument. He moved to a stack of journals, flipping one open to reveal meticulous notes on the tomb's structure, interspersed with angry marginalia about Vance's incompetence. A single page caught his attention, its edge marked with a faint smudge of reddish-brown, similar to the stain near the tomb. "This mark," Poirot said, holding up the page, "it resembles rust. Have you been handling chemicals recently, Doctor Grayson?" Grayson hesitated, then shrugged. "Rust? Likely from my tools. The desert is harsh on equipment. You're grasping at straws, Poirot." "Straws, perhaps," Poirot said, "but even straws may build a nest for the truth." He closed the journal, his gaze lingering on Grayson's tense posture. "One final question, monsieur. You claim you were in your tent after your argument. Can anyone confirm this?" Grayson's lips pressed into a thin line. "I work alone at night. My assistant, Mr. Ellis, was asleep. But I assure you, I had no reason to harm Vance. His death only delays my work." Poirot inclined his head, dismissing Grayson with a polite nod. "Merci, Docteur. Grayson, we shall speak again." As they stepped back into the sunlight, Hastings mopped his brow, his voice low. "He's a prickly sort, isn't he? That missing vial, Poirot, it's damning. And that argument last night sounds like he had plenty of reason to want Vance out of the way." Poirot's eyes twinkled with calculation. "Reason, oui, but proof? Not yet. Dr. Grayson is a man of ambition, Hastings, and ambition can blind as well as drive. The missing vial is suggestive, but we must confirm its contents. And this rust-like stain, it appears again, linking the tomb to this tent. We must send a sample to the chemist in Cairo." They walked toward the central tent, where Sir Roderick awaited with news. "Poirot," he said, his face grim, We've searched Vance's belongings. The key to the amulet's case is missing. It wasn't on his body or in his tent. Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. Missing, you say? This is a thread we must follow. The key, the vial, the defaced carving. These are not separate events, but parts of a single tapestry. We must unravel it carefully. Hastings glanced back at Grayson's tent, his mind still on the fiery archaeologist. Grayson's got the motive, Poirot. He hated Vance, wanted the amulet's glory for himself. And those chemicals, he could have slipped cyanide into Vance's drink easily enough. Easily, perhaps, Poirot said. But ease is not proof. We must consider the others. Miss Wentworth, with her access to the amulet, and Monsieur Khalid, with his knowledge of the shadows. The truth, Hastings, lies in the details, and we have only begun to collect them. As they reached the camp's edge, a labourer hurried toward them, his eyes wide with urgency. Monsieur Poirot, I found something. Near the rocks, where the shadow was seen last night. He held out a small, tattered piece of cloth, its edges frayed, its colour a faded blue. Poirot took it, his fingers tracing the fabric. This is no Bedouin cloak, he murmured. It is fine, perhaps part of a scarf, and it matches the shade of Doctor, Grayson's attire. He tucked the cloth into his pocket, his mind already weaving new connections. Merci, my friend. You have done well. To Hastings, he added, the pieces, they begin to fit, but the puzzle is far from complete. Come, we must prepare for our next interview. The little grey cells, they are restless, and the truth, it waits for no man. Chapter 5. The curator's obsession. The midday sun hung high over the archaeological camp at Tel El Masr, its unrelenting heat driving most of the labourers to seek shade beneath the scattered tents. Hercule Poirot, however, remained undaunted, his pristine suit a defiant contrast to the dusty chaos of the desert. He strode purposefully toward the tent of Miss Clara Wentworth, the curator, whose meticulous care for the expedition's artifacts had been overshadowed by the theft of the amulet of Anubis and the death of Dr. Harold Vance. Captain Arthur Hastings followed, his face flushed from the heat, his notebook clutched tightly as he muttered about the oppressive climate. Really, Poirot, Hastings said, fanning himself with his hat. How you keep so composed in this furnace is beyond me. Miss Wentworth's tent should be a relief, at least, neat as a pin, from what I've heard. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Order, mon ami, is a reflection of the mind. Miss Wentworth's precision may reveal much, or conceal it. We shall see. He paused at the tent's entrance, noting the neatly tied flap and the faint sound of a typewriter clacking within. Mademoiselle Wentworth, he called softly. Hercule Poirot requests a moment of your time. The clacking ceased, and Clara Wentworth appeared at the entrance, her auburn hair pinned tightly beneath a broad-brimmed hat, her green eyes wary but composed. She was a woman of refined features, her posture rigid, as though braced for scrutiny. In her hand, she held a leather-bound notebook, its pages marked with precise annotations. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady but tinged with fatigue. I expected you would come. Please, enter. The interior of her tent was a study, in contrast to Dr. Grayson's chaotic domain. A folding desk was lined with neatly labelled files, a typewriter sat beside a stack of catalogue cards, and a small silver-framed photograph of a young man in military uniform stood sentinel at the desk's edge. The air smelled faintly of ink and lavender, a touch of civility in the wilds of the desert. Poirot's sharp eyes took it all in, lingering briefly on the photograph before settling on Clara. "Mademoiselle," he began, his tone polite but probing, "you are the curator, entrusted with the amulet of Anubis. It was in your care last, oui? Tell me of its final moments before it vanished." Clara sat, smoothing her skirt with a nervous gesture. "I catalogued the amulet at 9 o'clock last night, in the presence of Dr. Vance and Mr. Khalid. It was extraordinary. Gold, inlaid with lapis lazuli, its surface etched with hieroglyphs invoking Anubis's protection. I recorded every detail in my notebook." She tapped the leather cover, her fingers lingering. "Doctor." Vance placed it in the locked case himself, and he kept the key. "I returned to my tent afterward and remained here until the morning, when I heard of his death." Poirot nodded, his gaze fixed on her. "You are precise, mademoiselle, as befits your role. Yet the case was opened without force, suggesting the key was used. Dr. Vance kept it on his person, you say. Could anyone else have had access?" Clara's lips parted, then closed, her eyes flickering with unease. "No one, to my knowledge. Dr. Vance was meticulous. He wore the key on a chain around his neck. If it's missing, as Sir Roderick claims, then—" She trailed off, her hands tightening around her notebook. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then someone took it, mademoiselle. Someone close enough to Dr. Vance to gain his trust, or to act in stealth. You were seen leaving your tent near midnight, near the tomb. Why?" Clara's face paled, her composure faltering. "Midnight. I couldn't sleep. The amulet's discovery was momentous, and I was anxious about its security. I went to check the storage tent to ensure everything was in order. I didn't go near the tomb." Poirot tilted his head, noting the faint tremor in her voice. "Anxious, you say. An admirable concern, but curious timing. And this notebook of yours, it is most detailed, oui." He gestured toward it, and Clara hesitated before handing it over. Poirot flipped through the pages, his fingers pausing at a torn edge where a single sheet was missing. "A page is gone, mademoiselle. What was written here?" Clara's eyes widened, her hand rising to her throat. I don't know. I didn't notice it missing. Perhaps it was torn accidentally during cataloguing. My notes are extensive. A page could have been misplaced." Poirot closed the notebook, his expression unreadable. "Misplaced, perhaps, or removed. The little grey cells, they wonder what secrets that page held." He set the notebook down, his gaze drifting to the photograph. "This young man, who is he?" Clara's cheeks flushed, her voice softening. "My brother, Edward. He died in the war. The photograph is a reminder of why I do this work, to preserve history, so we never forget." Poirot nodded, his tone gentle but firm. "A noble purpose, mademoiselle, yet passion for history can become obsession. The amulet, it was a prize for your museum, oui? Did you not wish to possess it, to ensure its place in London?" Clara's eyes flashed with indignation. "Possess it? Never. My duty is to protect, not to steal. The amulet belongs to Egypt, to the world. I would never betray that trust." Poirot studied her, noting the sincerity in her voice, but also the tension in her posture. "Betrayal, mademoiselle, takes many forms. Tell me, did you see anyone near the tomb during your midnight errand?" Clara hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands. "I saw no one clearly, but there was a shadow, moving quickly near the rocks. I thought it was a labourer, perhaps checking the site. I didn't linger." Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. "A shadow, you say? This is the second mention of such a figure. Most intriguing. He rose, handing back the notebook. Merci, Mademoiselle Wentworth. Your candor is appreciated. But the truth, it is like the desert sand, shifting yet revealing. As they stepped outside, Hastings exhaled, his brow furrowed. She's hiding something, Poirot. That missing page, and her being out at midnight, it doesn't add up. Do you think she took the amulet? Poirot's eyes gleamed with calculation. Hiding, oui, but what? Her anxiety is genuine, yet her story has gaps. The missing page, the shadow, her proximity to the tomb. These are threads we must weave. And this photograph of her brother, it stirs something in her, perhaps guilt, perhaps grief. They walked toward the central tent, where Sir Roderick was overseeing the labourers. Poirot paused, his gaze sweeping the camp. Hastings, we must learn more of this shadow. 2 witnesses now speak of it, yet its identity eludes us. And the missing key. It is the heart of this mystery. We must find where it has gone. A labourer approached, his face anxious. Monsieur Poirot, I found this near the storage tent. He held out a small metal clasp, its surface tarnished, but engraved with a faint hieroglyph, a jackal's head. Poirot took it, his fingers tracing the engraving. Anubis, again. This clasp, it is not from the tomb, but it is old. Where was it found, precisely? Near the tent's entrance, the labourer said. It was half buried, as if dropped in haste. Poirot tucked the clasp into his pocket, his mind racing. Merci, my friend. You have added a piece to our puzzle. To Hastings he added, this clasp, it may belong to our shadow. We must discover its owner. Come, we have much to do before the day is done. As they moved toward the tomb, the desert stretched endlessly before them, its secrets buried deep. Poirot's thoughts were a whirl of connections, the vial, the key, the shadow, the clasp. The truth was near, he felt it. But like the sands, it remained just out of reach, waiting for the little grey cells to uncover its form. Chapter 6. The Guide's Silence. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the archaeological camp at Tel el Masr, its golden light softening the stark outlines of the tents and ruins. Hercule Poirot, his suit still improbably pristine despite the desert's persistent dust, moved with purpose toward the modest tent of Hassan Khalid, the enigmatic guide whose knowledge of the terrain was matched only by his reticence. Captain Arthur Hastings followed, his face etched with curiosity, his notebook tucked under his arm as he adjusted his hat against the glare. The camp was quieter now, the labourers' chatter subdued by the weight of recent events, but the air thrummed with unspoken tension, as if the desert itself held its breath. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low. This Khalid fellow's a tough nut to crack. He barely said a word in the meeting. And those eyes of his, sharp as a hawk's. Do you think he's hiding something? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint glimmer of amusement in his grey eyes. Hiding, mon ami. Most certainly. But what? Silence is a canvas, Hastings. It may be blank, or it may conceal a masterpiece. Monsieur Khalid knows more than he shares, and today we shall encourage him to speak. They reached the tent, its canvas flap tied loosely, revealing a sparse interior that contrasted sharply with the cluttered spaces of Grayson and Wentworth. A rolled prayer rug lay in one corner, a small brass lamp hung from a pole, and a leather satchel rested on a low stool. The simplicity was deliberate, almost austere, and Poirot noted it with interest. Monsieur Khalid, he called, his voice clear but courteous. Hercule Poirot requests your presence. Hassan emerged from the shadows, his tall frame moving with a quiet grace. His dark eyes met Poirot's without flinching, but there was a guarded quality to his expression, as though he weighed every word before it was spoken. He wore a simple tunic and trousers, his hands calloused and scarred, evidence of a life shaped by the desert's demands. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low and measured, "you seek answers. I am a guide, not a storyteller. What do you wish to know?" Poirot clasped his hands behind his back, his gaze steady. "Monsieur Khalid, you are a man of the desert, with knowledge of these ruins that surpasses all others here. You were present when the amulet of Anubis was catalogued, oui? And you were in the camp when Dr. Vance met his end. Tell me of your movements last night, and of what you saw, or did not see." Hassan's expression remained impassive, his hands resting calmly at his sides. "I guided Dr. Vance to the tomb, as was my duty. I watched Miss Wentworth catalogue the amulet, and I saw Dr. Vance lock it in the case. Afterward, I returned here, to my tent. I slept, as I always do, until dawn. I heard nothing, saw nothing." Poirot tilted his head, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Nothing, monsieur. A man dies, a treasure vanishes, and you, with your keen senses, notice nothing. This is a camp of whispers, yet you claim silence. It is curious, no? A witness speaks of a cloaked figure near the tomb before midnight, a figure in native dress, moving swiftly. Could this have been you?" Hassan's gaze hardened, but his voice remained even. "I am not the only man in this camp who wears such clothing, Monsieur Poirot. The labourers, the Bedouin who pass through, they all dress as I do. I was in my tent, as I said. If you seek a shadow, look elsewhere." Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but probing. "The desert, you say, keeps its secrets. Yet you know its paths, its hiding places. A man with your skills could move unseen, take a key, perhaps even an amulet, and leave no trace. The lock was not forced, monsieur. Someone had the key, or great cunning." Hassan's jaw tightened, the faintest flicker of emotion crossing his face. "I am no thief, nor a murderer. My role is to guide, to protect the expedition. Dr. Vance trusted me, as did Sir Roderick. I had no quarrel with him." Poirot nodded, his eyes drifting to the leather satchel on the stool. "May I, monsieur?" he asked, gesturing toward it. Hassan hesitated, then gave a curt nod. Poirot opened the satchel, revealing a folded map of the ruins, a small compass, and a dagger with an intricately carved handle, its blade etched with Arabic script. He lifted the dagger, examining it closely. "A fine piece," he said. "A tool of the desert, oui? But sharp enough for other purposes. Perhaps—" Hassan's eyes followed the dagger, his voice steady. "It is for cutting rope, clearing brush. Not for blood. You will find no stains on it." Poirot set the dagger down, his fingers brushing the map. Its edges were worn, marked with annotations in a precise hand, notes on hidden paths and water sources. "You know the desert as few do," he said. "A man could hide a treasure in these sands, and none would find it without your guidance. Tell me, did Dr. Vance ever speak of enemies? Of threats?" Hassan paused, his gaze distant. He spoke of ambition, his own and others. He said the amulet would make his name, but it would also draw envy. He did not name names. Poirot's moustache quivered with interest. "Envy, you say? A powerful motive. And you, monsieur, did you envy his success?" Hassan's eyes met Poirot's, unflinching. "I seek no fame. The desert is my home, not a stage. I serve, I guide, nothing more." Poirot stepped back, his mind cataloguing the guide's words, his silences, the faint scar across his knuckles. Merci, Monsieur Khalid. Your words are few, but they are noted. We shall speak again. As they left the tent, Hastings exhaled, his voice low. He's like a stone wall, Poirot. Not a crack in his story. But it's too perfect, don't you think? A man like that out here, he could slip in and out of the shadows without a sound. Poirot's eyes gleamed with calculation. Précisément, Hastings. His silence is not empty. It is deliberate. He knows more than he says. But whether it is guilt or caution, I cannot yet say. The dagger, the map, these are tools of a man who moves with purpose. We must watch him closely. They walked toward the central tent, where Sir Roderick was reviewing maps with a junior archaeologist. Poirot paused, producing the metal clasp found near the storage tent. Sir Roderick, he said, this clasp with its jackal's head, does it belong to anyone in the camp? Sir Roderick examined it, his brow furrowing. It's old, possibly from a local trader, but I have not seen it here. The labourers sometimes wear such trinkets, but this, it's finely made. I'll ask around. Poirot nodded, tucking the clasp away. Do so, s'il vous plaît. And the key to the amulet's case. Any news? None, Sir Roderick said grimly. It's as if it vanished with the amulet. Poirot's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the ruins loomed like silent sentinels. Vanished, perhaps, but not gone. The key, the clasp, the shadow. These are pieces of our puzzle, Hastings. We must find how they fit. As they moved toward the tomb, a labourer approached, his face anxious. Monsieur Poirot, I heard something last night, near the rocks. A low voice, speaking quickly, like an argument. I couldn't make out the words, but it was after the shadow was seen. Poirot's eyes sharpened. An argument, you say? At what hour? Just past. Midnight, the labourer replied. I thought it was the wind, but now I'm not sure. Poirot thanked him, his mind racing. An argument, Hastings. Another thread. The desert may be silent, but it is not deaf. Come, we must examine the rocks where this shadow and this voice were heard. The truth it hides, but not from Hercule Poirot. Chapter 7. The Clue in the Sand. The twilight hour settled over Tel El Masr, bathing the ancient ruins in a soft violet glow that seemed to hush the desert's relentless heat. Hercule Poirot, his silhouette sharp against the fading light, stood near the tomb where Dr. Harold Vance had met his untimely end. His keen eyes, undimmed by the gathering dusk, scanned the sandy expanse with meticulous care, as though the very grains might whisper their secrets. Captain Arthur Hastings hovered nearby, his face a mixture of anticipation and unease, his notebook open but idle in his hand. The camp was subdued, the labourers having retreated to their tents, leaving an eerie stillness broken only by the occasional rustle of wind across the dunes. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low. This place feels more like a graveyard every minute. That shadow, the argument, the missing key, it's all so confoundedly mysterious. Do you really think we'll find anything new out here? Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile, his gaze never leaving the ground. Mystery, mon ami, is merely truth waiting to be uncovered. The scene of the crime, it is like a book. Each mark, each trace, a word in the story. We have read only the first pages. Now, let us turn to the next. He moved toward the chalk outline, marking where Vance's body had been found, the sand around it still bearing the faint signs of a struggle. Scuffed patches, irregular ridges, but no clear footprints leading away. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers sifting through the sand with the precision of a jeweler. "Observe, Hastings," he said. "The sand is disturbed, yet the edges are smoothed as if brushed by a careful hand. Our killer sought to erase their path, but even the careful leave traces." His fingers paused, uncovering a small, glinting object half buried near the tomb's entrance, a metal button, its surface etched with a faint geometric pattern. Poirot held it to the light, his eyes narrowing. "This is no artifact, Hastings. It is modern, perhaps from a coat or jacket, and it is not native to the desert. Curious, none?" Hastings peered at the button, his brow furrowing. "Could it belong to one of our suspects? Grayson wears those heavy jackets, doesn't he? Or perhaps Clara. She's always bundled up against the sun." Poirot tucked the button into his handkerchief, his mind already weaving connections. "Perhaps, but we must not assume. The button is a clue, but its owner remains a shadow. Let us continue." He rose, moving toward the cluster of rocks where the mysterious cloaked figure had been sighted. The path was narrow, the sand undisturbed except for a faint trail of scuffs leading to a jagged outcrop. There, Poirot's flashlight beam caught a reddish-brown stain on a rock, similar to the one he had noted near the tomb. He crouched, examining it closely. "This stain, Hastings. It is not blood, as you thought before. It is rust, or perhaps a chemical residue. It matches the mark in Dr. Grayson's journal. A coincidence?" "I think not." Hastings scratched his head. "Rust out here? Could it be from a tool, maybe? Or something the killer dropped?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with calculation. A tool, a container, perhaps even a vial. The cyanide, it leaves traces when mishandled. We must have this analyzed. He marked the spot, intending to send a sample to Cairo with the vial from the tomb. Turning back to the tomb's entrance, Poirot's attention was drawn again to the defaced carving of Anubis. He traced the chipped edges with his finger, noting the precision of the damage. "This was no act of vandalism," he said softly. "It was deliberate, calculated to fuel the laborer's fears of a curse. The killer wished to distract, to obscure the truth with superstition." Hastings shivered, glancing at the darkening ruins. "It's working too. The workers are terrified. Half of them think Anubis himself took the amulet." Poirot's moustache quivered with disdain. "Superstition, bah! The amulet was taken by a human hand, and the carving defaced to make it seem otherwise. But why? To hide a theft, or to mask a murder?" As they circled the tomb, Poirot's flashlight caught a faint glint in the sand, a thin, twisted piece of wire, barely noticeable against the grains. He retrieved it, holding it up for inspection. "This, Hastings, is a lockpick, or part of one. Crude, but effective. It suggests an alternative to the missing key. Perhaps the case was not opened with Vance's key, after all." Hastings's eyes widened. "A lockpick? That points to someone with skill. Hassan, maybe. He's got that sly look about him, and he knows the camp like the back of his hand." Poirot shook his head. "Do not leap, mon ami. A lockpick requires skill, yes, but it is not unique to our guide. Any of our suspects could have learned such a trick, or employed another to do it." He pocketed the wire, his mind racing. The button, the stain, the lockpick, the defaced carving, each was a thread in the tapestry of the crime, but the pattern remained elusive. They returned to the chalk outline, where Poirot paused, his gaze distant. "The scene, Hastings. It tells a story. Dr. Vance was poisoned, likely by cyanide from the vial we found. The amulet was taken. The case opened without force. The key is missing, yet a lockpick suggests another method. The carving was defaced to sow fear, and the sand was brushed to hide tracks. Our killer is clever, but not infallible. As they prepared to leave, a laborer approached, his face pale in the autumnal twilight. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice trembling, "I found this near the rocks where the shadow was seen." He held out a small folded piece of paper, its edges worn. Poirot unfolded it, revealing a sketch of the amulet of Anubis, its details remarkably accurate. Gold, lapis lazuli, hieroglyphs. A single word was scrawled in the margin. "Danger." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "This is no labourer's work," he said. "It is precise, like Miss Wentworth's notes. Yet why leave it here?" Hastings frowned. "Danger. Could it be a warning from Vance himself, or someone else?" Poirot tucked the paper away, his mind alight with possibilities. A warning, a threat, or a mistake. We must compare this to Miss Wentworth's notebook, and we must find the owner of this button, this lockpick. The desert hides much, Hastings, but not from Hercule Poirot. As they walked back to the camp, the stars began to emerge, their cold light casting the ruins in stark relief. Poirot's thoughts were a whirl of connections: the vial, the lockpick, the stain, the sketch. The truth was close. He felt it, like a shadow moving just beyond the light. "Come, Hastings," he said, his voice firm. "We must speak with Sir Roderick. The pieces are gathering, and soon the puzzle will reveal its form." Chapter 8. The alibi unraveled. The morning light crept over the dunes of Tel el Massa, bathing the archaeological camp in a pale golden hue that did little to dispel the tension that clung to the air like dust. Hercule Poirot, his suit as immaculate as ever despite the desert's relentless assault, stood at the center of the mess tent, where the expedition's key figures had gathered at his request. The canvas walls flapped gently in the breeze, and the scent of strong coffee mingled with the faint musk of sand and canvas. Captain Arthur Hastings stood beside him, his face a mixture of anticipation and unease, his notebook open, ready to capture every word. The labourers' murmurs outside were hushed, their fear of a curse now tempered by curiosity about the famous detective's next move. Poirot surveyed the three suspects seated before him: Dr. Leonard Grayson, Miss Clara Wentworth, and Mr. Hassan Khalid, each displaying their own brand of discomfort. Grayson's lean frame was rigid, his spectacles glinting with defiance. Clara clutched her notebook, her green eyes darting nervously. Hassan sat with his usual stoic calm, his dark gaze fixed on a point beyond the tent. Sir Roderick Blaine stood near the entrance, his diplomatic composure fraying under the strain of the investigation. The weight of Dr. Harold Vance's death and the theft of the amulet of Anubis pressed upon them all, and Poirot's presence promised a reckoning. "Messieurs et mademoiselles," Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding, "we stand at a crossroads. A man is dead, poisoned by cyanide. A treasure is stolen, its case opened without force. The key is missing, yet a lockpick suggests cunning. A carving of Anubis is defaced, whispers of a curse abound, and a shadow moves in the night. These are not random events, but threads in a tapestry woven by a single hand. Today, we shall unravel it." He turned first to Dr. Grayson, whose scowl deepened. "Dr. Grayson, you claim you were in your tent after your argument with Dr. Vance, working on your notes until midnight. Yet a piece of cloth, matching the blue of your scarf, was found near the tomb, torn as if caught in haste. How do you explain this?" Grayson's face flushed, his hands clenching the arms of his chair. "My scarf. Preposterous. I must have dropped it earlier in the day. The wind scatters things, Poirot. You know how it is out here. You're building a case on scraps and supposition." Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "Scraps, monsieur. Perhaps. But scraps can tell a story. This cloth was found where the shadow was seen, near the rocks. And your tent, it contains a case with a missing vial, one that matches the size of that found near Dr. Vance's body. A vial that smelled of cyanide. You, a man of science, have access to such poisons, do you not?" Grayson leapt to his feet, his voice rising. "I told you, my supplies are secure. If a vial is missing, someone took it. You're trying to pin this on me because of my rivalry with Vance, but I didn't kill him." Poirot raised a hand, his tone calm but unyielding. "Sit, monsieur. We are not finished." He turned to Clara Wentworth, whose pale face had grown paler still. "Mademoiselle Wentworth, you claim you left your tent at midnight to check the storage tent, not the tomb. Yet a witness places you near the tomb's entrance, and a page is missing from your notebook. A page, perhaps, that contained a sketch like the one found near the rocks, marked with the word danger. Why were you there, and what did you write?" Clara's hands trembled, her voice faltering. I told you, I couldn't sleep. I checked the storage tent. Nothing more. The missing page. It must have been an error, a draft I discarded. I don't know about any sketch. I swear, Monsieur Poirot, I had nothing to do with Dr. Vance's death." Poirot's eyes narrowed, noting the way her fingers tightened around her notebook. "An error, mademoiselle? Your work is meticulous, yet this page vanishes. And the sketch, it matches your style. Precise, detailed. The word danger, was it a warning you wrote, or one you received?" Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. "I don't know. I didn't write it. Please, you must believe me." Poirot turned at last to Hassan Khalid, whose silence had been a steady presence throughout the exchange. "Monsieur Khalid, you claim you slept through the night, yet a laborer heard voices near the rocks after midnight, arguing. A cloaked figure was seen, dressed in native garb. You, with your knowledge of the desert, could move unseen. Did you hear this argument, or were you part of it?" Hassan's dark eyes met Poirot's, steady and unyielding. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I was in my tent. I heard no voices, saw no shadows. If there was an argument, it was not mine. The desert is full of sounds, wind, animals, men. You mistake them for secrets." Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but piercing. "Secrets, monsieur, are my trade. This clasp," he produced the metal jackal's head from his pocket, "was found near the storage tent. It is old, finely made, not a laborer's trinket. Does it belong to you?" Hassan's gaze flickered to the clasp, but his expressions remained impassive. "I have no such trinket. Many pass through these sands, traders, Bedouin. It could belong to anyone." Poirot nodded, tucking the clasp away. "Perhaps. But the lockpick found near the tomb, the button, the rust-like stains, these are not the work of ghosts. Someone in this camp acted with purpose." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. "Let us consider the facts. Dr. Vance was poisoned, the amulet taken. The lockpick suggests skill, the missing key intimacy. The defaced carving points to a desire to mislead. Each of you had opportunity, and each, perhaps, a motive. He paused, his eyes sweeping the room. Doctor. Grayson, your rivalry with Vance was bitter, your ambition clear. Mademoiselle Wentworth, your passion for the amulet was profound, and your midnight wanderings suspect. Monsieur Khalid, your silence hides knowledge, and your skills make you a shadow in the night. But only one of you holds the truth. Sir Roderick cleared his throat, his voice strained. Poirot, have you any concrete evidence? The labourers are growing restless, and the authorities in Cairo are pressing for answers. Poirot's eyes gleamed with determination. Evidence, Sir Roderick, is like the stars. It shines brightest in the dark. The vial has been sent to Cairo for analysis. The cloth, the button, the lockpick, these are in my keeping. And this sketch. He held up the paper with the amulet's drawing. It will lead us to the truth. As the suspects rose to leave, Poirot caught a fleeting glance between Clara and Hassan, a momentary connection, too brief to define, but enough to stir his curiosity. Hastings, he said as they stepped outside. The alibis, they crumble like sand. Grayson's scarf, Clara's missing page, Hassan's silence. Each is a crack in their stories. We are close, mon ami. Hastings mopped his brow, his voice low. Close, but who's the culprit? Grayson's got the motive and the means, but Clara's acting guilty, and Hassan's too calm for my liking. Poirot smiled faintly. Calm or guilty, Hastings, the truth lies in the details. We must compare the sketch to Clara's notebook, trace the button's owner, and await the vial's analysis. The little grey cells, they are working, and, soon, the puzzle will be complete. As they walked toward the tomb, a labourer approached, his eyes wide. Monsieur Poirot, I found this near the camp's edge. He held out a small tarnished key, its shape matching the lock of the amulet's case. Poirot's eyes lit up, his fingers closing around the key. The missing key, Hastings, found at last. Now we shall see whose hand fits this lock. Chapter 9. The motive revealed. The sun hung low over Tel El Masr, casting long, wavering shadows across the desert camp, where the air was thick with anticipation. Hercule Poirot stood in the central tent, his diminutive figure commanding the space, as if he were a conductor poised before an orchestra. His suit remained immaculate, a testament to his defiance of the desert's chaos, and his grey eyes gleamed with the intensity of a man on the cusp of revelation. Captain Arthur Hastings stood beside him, his notebook clutched tightly, his face a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The suspects, Dr. Leonard Grayson, Miss Clara Wentworth, and Mr. Hassan Khalid, sat in a tense semicircle, their expressions ranging from defiance to unease. Sir Roderick Blaine hovered near the tent's entrance, his diplomatic composure strained by the mounting pressure of the investigation. Poirot held up the small, tarnished key found near the camp's edge, its surface catching the flickering light of a lantern. "Messieurs et mademoiselles," he began, his voice steady and resonant, "we approach the heart of this affair. Dr. Harold Vance was poisoned, the amulet of Anubis stolen, and a web of deception spun to mask the truth. This key, found today, unlocks the case that held the amulet. It was not on Dr. Vance's body, nor in his tent. It was discarded, hidden, as if its presence would betray the guilty. Let us now weave together the threads of this mystery." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze moving from one suspect to another. "The facts, they are clear. Dr. Vance died of cyanide poisoning, confirmed by the vial found near the tomb. The amulet's case was opened without force, suggesting the key, or a lockpick, as we found. A carving of Anubis was defaced, fueling talk of a curse. A cloaked figure was seen, a sketch marked "Danger" discovered, a button, a clasp, and rust-like stains all point to a calculated act. But why? What drives a man or woman to murder and theft? He turned to Dr. Grayson, whose lean frame stiffened, his spectacles glinting with barely concealed anger. "Doctor Grayson, your rivalry with Dr. Vance was no secret. You called him a charlatan, a glory seeker who would claim the amulet's discovery for himself. Your tent holds a case with a missing vial, matching the one that held cyanide. A piece of your scarf was found near the tomb, and a rust-like stain in your journal matches one near the rocks. You argued with Vance the night he died. Your ambition, monsieur, was it so great that you would kill to secure your fame?" Grayson's face reddened, his voice sharp. "This is absurd, Poirot. Yes, I despised Vance's methods, but murder? I'm a scholar, not a killer. The scarf was lost, the vial stolen. Someone's framing me. You've no proof, only guesses." Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "Proof, monsieur. The little grey cells, they gather more than guesses. The vial, it bears a partial fingerprint, which I have sent to Cairo for analysis. If it matches yours, what then?" Grayson paled, his hands clenching. "It won't. I swear it." Poirot turned to Clara Wentworth, whose green eyes were wide with fear, her hands gripping her notebook as if it were a lifeline. "Mademoiselle Wentworth, your passion for the amulet was profound. You catalogued it, sketched it, yet a page is missing from your notebook, and a sketch marked 'Danger' was found near the rocks, in your style. You were seen near the tomb at midnight, despite your claim of checking the storage tent. Was it fear that drove you, or desire for the amulet's glory?" Clara's voice trembled, tears brimming. "I told you, I didn't go to the tomb. I checked the storage tent because I was worried. The missing page, I don't know how it happened. That sketch isn't mine. I loved my work, Monsieur Poirot, but I would never steal or harm anyone." Poirot's gaze softened, but his tone remained firm. "Love, mademoiselle, can twist into obsession. The photograph of your brother, does it remind you of a duty you feel compelled to fulfill, perhaps at any cost?" Clara shook her head, her voice breaking. "Edward's memory drives me to preserve history, not destroy it. Please, you must believe me." Poirot turned at last to Hassan Khalid, whose stoic demeanour had not wavered, though his dark eyes followed every movement. "Monsieur Khalid, you are a man of silence, yet silence speaks. You know the desert's paths, could move unseen. A cloaked figure was seen, voices heard arguing. The clasp with Anubis's head, does it not suggest a connection to you, a man of this land?" Hassan's voice was calm, measured. "I am a guide, Monsieur Poirot, not a thief. The clasp is not mine. I was in my tent, as I said. The desert holds many shadows, but I am not one of them." Poirot paused, his eyes gleaming with sudden clarity. "The shadows, oui. But one shadow stands out. Dr. Grayson, your ambition was the strongest motive. You coveted the amulet's fame, resented Vance's claim. You had cyanide in your tent, a vial missing. The scarf, the stain, the argument, all point to you. You poisoned Vance's water, took the key from his body, and opened the case. The lockpick, the defaced carving, these were distractions to suggest a curse or an outsider. But the fingerprint on the vial, it will confirm your guilt." Grayson leapt up, his voice a snarl. "You're mad. I didn't touch him. Poirot raised a hand, his voice cutting through the outburst. Enough, monsieur. The evidence mounts and your denials weaken. The sketch marked danger. It was not Clara's, but yours, dropped in haste as you hid the amulet. You planned to retrieve it later, to claim the discovery as your own. Grayson's shoulders slumped, his defiance crumbling. You can't prove it, he muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. The little grey cells, they see clearly. The authorities in Cairo will have the fingerprint results soon. If you have more to say, now is the time. The tent was silent, the air heavy with the weight of Poirot's words. Sir Roderick stepped forward, his face grim. Poirot, are you certain? This is a grave accusation. Poirot nodded. Certain, Sir Roderick. The motive, the means, the opportunity, they align. Dr. Grayson's ambition drove him to murder, and his cunning sought to hide it. But the truth, it cannot be buried. Hastings whispered, Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it again. But the amulet, where is it? Poirot's eyes twinkled. That, mon ami, is the final piece. We shall find it, with Dr. Grayson's help, or without. As the suspects dispersed, Grayson's face ashen, Poirot turned to Hastings. The net tightens, Hastings. The amulet is near, hidden in the sands. We must act swiftly, before the guilty seek to cover their tracks further. Chapter 10. The Confession. The desert air at Tel El Masr was heavy with the promise of evening, the sun sinking behind the dunes, casting the camp in a burnished glow. Hercule Poirot stood outside the central tent, his small, fastidious figure a beacon of calm amidst the mounting tension. His grey eyes, sharp as ever, gleamed with the certainty of a man who had unravelled the knot of a complex puzzle. Captain Arthur Hastings stood beside him, his face a mixture of awe and impatience, his notebook tucked under his arm as he awaited the next move in Poirot's intricate game. Inside the tent, Dr. Leonard Grayson sat alone, his lean frame slumped, his spectacles reflecting the flicker of a single lantern. The other suspects, Clara Wentworth and Hassan Khalid, had been dismissed to their tents under Sir Roderick Blaine's watchful eye. But Grayson remained, the weight of Poirot's accusations pressing upon him like the desert heat. Poirot entered the tent, his steps deliberate, his hands clasped behind his back. "Doctor, Grayson," he said, his voice low but resonant, "the time for denials is past. The evidence, it encircles you like the sands around this camp. The vial of cyanide bearing your fingerprint, the torn scarf found near the tomb, the rust-like stain linking your journal to the rocks where the shadow was seen. The sketch marked danger in your hand, dropped in haste. You poisoned Dr. Vance, took the key from his body, and stole the amulet of Anubis. You defaced the carving of Anubis to fuel talk of a curse, to divert suspicion. But the little grey cells, they see through your deception. Confess, monsieur, and unburden your soul." Grayson's head snapped up, his eyes wild behind his spectacles. "You're wrong, Poirot. I couldn't." His voice cracked, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. "You've twisted everything, built a case on nothing but scraps." Poirot's moustache quivered with a faint smile, his gaze unyielding. "Scraps, monsieur? No, these are the bricks of truth. The fingerprint on the vial, it is yours, confirmed by the chemist in Cairo, whose report arrived this afternoon. The scarf, it matches the one you wore yesterday. The sketch, its lines mirror those in your journals, not Miss Wentworth's. And the lockpick, found near the tomb, it was a fallback, was it not? In case the key failed you. You planned this with care, but care is no match for method. Grayson's shoulders sagged, his defiance crumbling like the ancient stones of the ruins. He buried his face in his hands, his voice a hoarse whisper. All right, I did it. I killed Vance. But it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Poirot leaned forward, his tone gentle but insistent. Tell me, monsieur. Tell me everything. Grayson took a shuddering breath, his eyes distant. Vance was going to take everything. My funding, my reputation, my chance at immortality. The amulet of Anubis was the fiend of a lifetime, and he was going to claim it, publish it, leave me in the dust. I begged him to share credit, to acknowledge my work, but he laughed, called me a second-rate scholar. That night we argued again, near the tomb. I had the cyanide in my tent for preserving artifacts. It was easy to slip it into his water flask when he wasn't looking. He drank, staggered, fell. I didn't mean for it to be so quick, so final. He paused, his voice breaking. The amulet. I took it, used the key from his neck. I hid it in the dunes, planning to discover it later, to secure my place in history. The carving, I chipped it to scare the labourers, make them think it was a curse. I brushed the sand to hide my tracks. The sketch, I drew it, a warning to myself, a reminder of the risk. I dropped it by mistake. Poirot nodded, his expression grave. And the button? The rust-like stains? Grayson's eyes flickered with surprise. The button, it must have come off my jacket. The stains, I don't know. Maybe from the vial or my tools. I wasn't careful enough. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice remained firm. You sought glory, monsieur, but found only tragedy. The amulet. Where is it hidden? Grayson swallowed, his voice barely audible. In the dune beyond the third rock cluster, wrapped in a cloth, buried shallowly. I marked the spot with a small stone shaped like a crescent. Poirot turned to Hastings, who had been listening in stunned silence. Hastings, inform Sir Roderick. We must recover the amulet at once, and Dr. Grayson will accompany the authorities to Cairo. As Hastings hurried out, Grayson looked up, his face ashen. What will happen to me, Poirot? Poirot's eyes held a trace of pity. Justice, monsieur. The law will decide your fate. But the truth, it is free now, and that is my concern. Outside, the camp was stirring as Sir Roderick organized a small group to retrieve the amulet. Poirot stepped into the cooling air, his mind still turning over the details. Hastings, he said, as his friend returned. The confession. It fits the evidence. Yet I wonder. Was Grayson alone in his knowledge? The clasp, the voices heard arguing. There may be more to this tale. Hastings frowned, his voice low. You think Clara or Hassan knew something? They seemed shaken, but not guilty. Poirot's eyes gleamed with calculation. Not guilty, perhaps, but not ignorant. The glance between them, the clasp with Anubis's head, it lingers in my mind. For now, we have our murderer, but the desert may yet hold secrets. As the stars emerged above, Poirot's thoughts were already on the next step, ensuring the amulet's recovery and tying the final threads of the mystery. The truth, as always, was his North Star, guiding him through the sands of deception. Chapter 11. The relic recovered. The dawn broke over Tel El-Mazar with a quiet splendor, the first rays of sunlight gilding the dunes and casting long shadows across the ancient ruins. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the archaeological camp, his immaculate suit a stark contrast to the rugged landscape. his grey eyes fixed on the horizon where the third rock cluster loomed. Captain Arthur Hastings stood beside him, his face alight with anticipation, though his brow was creased with the lingering weight of Dr. Grayson's confession. The camp was abuzz with restrained excitement. The labourers gathered in small groups, their whispers of curses now mingling with curiosity about the detective's triumph. Sir Roderick Blaine, his diplomatic poise restored, coordinated a small party to retrieve the amulet of Anubis, guided by Grayson's directions. "Poirot," Hastings said, adjusting his hat against the rising sun, "you've done it again. Unravelled the whole thing like a skein of wool. But I must say, I'm still uneasy about that clasp and those voices heard near the rocks. Do you think Grayson acted alone?" Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile, his gaze distant. "The confession, mon ami. It is a cornerstone. But the edifice of truth may have hidden rooms. Dr. Grayson's guilt is clear. His ambition, his poison, his theft. Yet the clasp with Anubis's head, the argument overheard, these are threads not yet fully woven. For now, we focus on the amulet. Its recovery will close one chapter, but the book, it may not yet be finished." Sir Roderick approached, his face resolute. "Poirot, we're ready. Grayson's under guard, and the high labourers have marked the dune with the crescent stone. Shall we proceed?" Poirot nodded, his voice firm. "Oui, Sir Roderick. Let us reclaim what was stolen. But take care. The desert is treacherous, and the guilty may still have allies." The small group, Poirot, Hastings, Sir Roderick, and 2 trusted labourers, set out towards the dune beyond the third rock cluster. The sand crunched beneath their feet, the air cool but heavy with the promise of heat. The crescent-shaped stone, half buried, glinted in the sunlight, marking the spot Grayson had described. One of the labourers, a wiry man named Ahmed, knelt and began to dig, his hands moving with practised ease. Within moments, he unearthed a small bundle wrapped in coarse cloth, its edges stained with sand. Sir Roderick took the bundle, his hands trembling slightly as he unwrapped it. The amulet of Anubis gleamed within. A disk of gold, its surface inlaid with lapis lazuli, its edges etched with hieroglyphs, invoking the jackal-headed god. The labourers gasped, stepping back as if the relic might still carry a curse. Clara Wentworth, summoned to verify the find, approached with wide eyes, her breath catching as she examined it. "It's intact," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Every detail just as I recorded. It's a miracle it wasn't damaged." Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "No miracle, mademoiselle, but method. The amulet was hidden with care, to be discovered by Dr. Grayson at a moment of his choosing. His ambition was his downfall." Hassan Khalid, standing at the edge of the group, watched in silence, his dark eyes unreadable. Poirot noted his presence, the faint scar on his knuckles catching the light. "Monsieur Khalid," he said, his tone mild but probing, "you see the amulet restored. Does it stir no thoughts in you?" Hassan's gaze met Poirot's, steady and calm. "It is a treasure of my land, Monsieur Poirot. Its return is justice. I need no more thoughts than that." Poirot nodded, but his mind lingered on the guide's reticence. The clasp, the voices, the glance between Hassan and Clara. These were echoes of a mystery not fully resolved. He turned to Clara, whose hands trembled as she touched the amulet. "Mademoiselle Wentworth, your passion for this relic is clear. Does its recovery ease your heart?" Clara's eyes glistened with tears. "It does, Monsieur Poirot. I feared it lost forever, a piece of history stolen from the world. Thank you, Poirot inclined his head, his expression softening. It is my duty, mademoiselle. But tell me, did you ever suspect Dr. Grayson? Clara hesitated, her voice low. I knew he resented Dr. Vance, but murder, I couldn't believe it. He was so driven, so consumed by his work. I thought it was just rivalry. Poirot's gaze sharpened, but he said nothing more. As the group returned to the camp, the amulet secure in Sir Roderick's keeping, Hastings leaned close. Poirot, you're still thinking about that clasp, aren't you? And Hassan, he's too quiet, too composed. Could he have helped Grayson? Poirot's eyes twinkled with calculation. Helped Hastings? Perhaps not. But he knows something, as does Mademoiselle Wentworth. The glance they shared, the clasp with Anubis's head, it suggests a connection, a secret not yet revealed. For now, the amulet is safe, and Grayson faces justice. But the little grey cells, they remain vigilant. Sir Roderick paused, holding the amulet's case. Poirot, the authorities in Cairo have been informed. Grayson will be taken tomorrow. What of the amulet? It belongs in a museum, but the locals are anxious about its curse. Poirot's moustache quivered with disdain. A curse, Sir Roderick. No, it is human greed that brings calamity. The amulet must be studied, preserved, but with respect for this land. Let it be a symbol of truth, not fear. As the camp settled for the night, the labourers' whispers grew quieter, their fears easing with the amulet's recovery. Poirot stood alone, gazing at the starlit dunes. Hastings, he said softly, the desert is vast, but the human heart is vaster still. We have found the amulet, but the shadows of this case linger. We must watch and wait. Chapter 12. The Journey Home. The morning sun rose over Tel El Massa, its gentle light softening the stark outlines of the desert camp, where the ancient ruins stood as silent witnesses to the drama that had unfolded. Hercule Poirot, his suit as impeccable as ever, stood near the edge of the encampment, his small valise packed and ready for the journey back to Cairo. The amulet of Anubis was safely secured in a locked case under Sir Roderick Blaine's care, destined for careful study and preservation. Dr. Leonard Grayson, now in the custody of the local authorities, awaited transport to face justice in Cairo, his ambition reduced to a cautionary tale. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, fussed with his own luggage, his face a mixture of relief and lingering curiosity as he glanced at the dunes stretching endlessly before them. Poirot, Hastings said, adjusting his hat against the morning glare. You've pulled it off again. Murder solved, amulet recovered, and the camp's back to some semblance of order. But I can't shake the feeling we've missed something. That clasp with Anubis's head, the voices heard near the rocks. Do you think there's more to this business? Poirot's grey eyes twinkled with a familiar blend of amusement and calculation, his moustache quivering slightly as he gazed at the horizon. Mon cher Hastings, you are like the desert wind, always stirring, always seeking. The case, it is resolved. Doctor, Grayson's confession, the amulet's recovery, the fingerprint on the vial, these are the pillars of truth. Yet, you are right to sense shadows. The clasp, the glance between Mademoiselle Wentworth and Monsieur Khalid, these are echoes of a story not fully told. But for now, the crime is solved, and we must leave some mysteries to the sands. They walked toward the motor car, waiting to take them to the railway station, the camp bustling with renewed purpose as labourers resumed their work. Clara Wentworth stood near the storage tent, her auburn hair catching the light as she catalogued artifacts with renewed vigour. She looked up, meeting Poirot's gaze, and offered a tentative smile. "Monsieur Poirot," she called, approaching, "I cannot thank you enough. The amulet's return. It's a gift to history." Poirot inclined his head, his tone gentle. "It is my duty, mademoiselle. But tell me, does your heart rest easier now?" Clara's smile faltered, her eyes flickering with something unspoken. "It does, though. The loss of Dr. Vance still weighs heavily, and I hope the amulet brings knowledge, not more sorrow." Poirot noted the hesitation, his mind filing away the nuance. "Knowledge, mademoiselle, is the antidote to sorrow. Guard it well." As they moved on, Hassan Khalid emerged from his tent, his tall figure moving with quiet grace. He paused, his dark eyes meeting Poirot's with a nod of respect. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low, "the desert owes you a debt. You have brought order where there was chaos." Poirot's gaze lingered on the scar across Hassan's knuckles, his voice soft but probing. "Order, monsieur, is my trade. But the desert, it keeps its secrets, does it not? Perhaps one day you will share yours." Hassan's expression remained impassive, but a flicker of understanding passed between them. "The desert speaks to those who listen," he said, turning away. As the motorcar rumbled to life, Sir Roderick approached, his face etched with gratitude. "Poirot, you've done us a great service. The expedition can continue, and the amulet will be preserved. What will you do now?" Poirot smiled, his hands clasped behind his back. "I return to Cairo, Sir Roderick, and then, perhaps, to quieter pursuits. But the little grey cells, they never rest. There are always puzzles to solve." The journey to the railway station was quiet, the desert rolling past in a blur of sand and stone. Hastings leaned back, his voice thoughtful. "You know, Poirot, I'll never get used to how you do it. Piecing together all those bits and bobs, the scarf, the vial, the sketch. It's like magic." Poirot's moustache twitched with amusement. "Magic, Hastings? No, it is method. The human heart, it leaves traces. Anger, fear, ambition. Dr. Grayson's traces were clear, but the others, they leave fainter marks. Mademoiselle Wentworth's grief, Monsieur Khalid's silence. They hint at stories we may never fully know." Hastings frowned, his curiosity unquenched. "You think they were involved, don't you? Not in the murder, but in something." Poirot's eyes gleamed with a knowing light. "Involved, perhaps, in their own secrets. The clasp, the voices, they suggest a subplot, a connection we have not unravelled. But for now, the murder is solved, the amulet restored. The rest, it belongs to the desert." As the train whistle sounded in the distance, Poirot gazed out at the passing sands, his mind still turning over the case's lingering echoes. "The world, Hastings," he said softly, "is full of mysteries, buried like treasures in the sand. We uncover what we can, but some truths remain hidden, waiting for another day." Hastings chuckled, settling into his seat. "Well, as long as you're around, old chap, no mystery's safe for long." Poirot smiled, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Perhaps, mon ami, perhaps,